The two-tone Rolex Datejust. It's probably the most recognizable watch from the most recognizable brand. But what happens if you want to get something that embodies the same spirit, but that also brings something new and different to the table? Hi everyone and welcome to Shaluso. And yes, today we're going to be taking a look at alternatives to the classic two-tone Datejust. But of course, before we get into that, we need to talk about what makes the Datejust so special to begin with. Well, in the 80s and 90s, when the Daytona was still considered a sales flop until 1988, and when the Nautilus was still being sold for under list and billed pretty much as the poor man's Patek, it was the Rolex Datejust, specifically the two-tone with the fluted bezel, that was the sign of success. If you wanted to move up in the world, the Rolex Datejust was your go-to watch. And for good reason. It was an amazing all-rounder, and its two-tone look helped it straddle that line between being formal and especially appropriate in a business sense, but it was still utilitarian enough that you could wear it every day, wear it on the weekends, and its modern iteration is still equally robust and equally versatile. For $13,250 US, when you're buying it retail, you still get a 41mm steel and gold watch on a jubilee bracelet, a modern jubilee bracelet at that, with an easy link, and on the inside you have the caliber 3235, which is used in other watches such as the Yachtmaster or even the Sea Dweller. So it's extremely robust, extremely modern by having a 70-hour power reserve, the Parachrom Bleu hairspring, and of course it's still extremely accurate thanks to being a superlative chronometer. But what happens if you want to get something that's a little bit different, something that still embodies the spirit of this watch, but that brings it from a different angle? Well, if we take it back to the 80s or 90s, and business especially, Japan was a powerhouse economy. Coming up through the ranks, everyone wanted to do business with Japan, and probably every boardroom you found was littered with two-tone Datejusts. But it's 2020 now. Grand Seiko has given us the SBGH 252 from their Heritage line, which really embodies the versatility of the Datejust, but with a distinctly Japanese approach. You have to remember, at the 80s and 90s, the Japanese were winning a lot of economic wars by simply doing things better than everyone else, by doing them more efficiently, and also by advancing the technology further while still providing pristine quality. And that's still true today with this Grand Seiko. On the outside, it looks very much the part, still very 80s with the yellow, gold, and steel. However, it has the immaculate Zaratsu polishing on the outside, typical of a Grand Seiko, and it has a very distinctive shape. You can put this next to the Datejust and you won't think that one's an homage of the other, but you can tell that they came from the same school of thought. On the inside, though, is where things get more interesting. The 9S85 operates at 36,000 VPH, so it's a high beat movement, giving it an extra smooth sweep even when compared to the Rolex. But there's much more to it than just a smooth sweep. An El Primero will give you that sort of vibration as well. But what an El Primero won't give you is that special Spron 610 hairspring that it has that gives it additional anti-magnetic property, or an escapement made with Grand Seiko's proprietary MEMS technology, which allows it to be extra precise and extra smooth. And the beauty of this is that you can get this new for 11,000 US. There's even a limited edition of 250 pieces with a chocolate dial, which you can get for the same price. And I can guarantee you will never run into another one of these anywhere near as often as you would with a Datejust. So that's what the Japanese have to offer while still embodying that 80s spirit. But what if we want to lean into one of the other elements of the Datejust? Well, you have the brand new for 2020 Baume Mercier Clifton Baumatic chronometer. Now, this model was just released, and obviously there are some concessions being a Baume Mercier compared to a Rolex. Obviously, for your 4,400 US, you're not getting solid gold on the bracelet or on the bezel. Instead, you are getting capped pink gold. But the pink gold is a bit of a more modern touch, and when you look at this watch, it's clearly leaning more into the formal edge of things. It's much less ostentatious than the Rolex, but still has a bit of that bling factor by having the two-tone. And then on the inside, you still have a manufacturer caliber, COSC certified, and with a 5-day power reserve. That's 120 hours versus the 70 found in the Rolex. The downsides, of course, apart from the capped pink gold, are that it only has 50 meters of water resistance. So again, this shows you it's leaning much more into the dress element of it. It's a little bit more formal, also a little bit more discreet, but definitely an option if you want that versatility. You can still wear it every day, but perhaps you can't beat it up as much as you could the Rolex. And then last but not least, we can't do a Rolex Alternatives video without mentioning their number one competitor, Omega. Now, a lot of people gravitate towards the Aquaterra when comparing to the Datejust, but in my opinion, that's more of a competitor to the Yachtmaster than to the Datejust. For the Datejust, Omega has something else, the Constellation Globemaster. This was one of the first watches to be released with Omega's METAS certification, which takes things even further than cost because it's a case test and it also tests things like their water resistance, anti-magnetism, and its accuracy in various positions versus its accuracy as just a movement. And it features one of Omega's premier movements on the inside, the caliber 8900. On the face of it, this is just another time and date watch, but in addition to having a 60-hour power reserve, METAS, and COSC certification, it's also anti-magnetic. It has a silicone hairspring and Omega's coaxial escapement, which allows it to be much more reliable over the long term, and that's why Omega can have the confidence to match Rolex on that 5-year warranty. On the outside, it does have a much more discreet look than the Datejust, and it also modernizes things a bit. Instead of having the polished center links of a Jubilee, you have a 3-link bracelet that isn't quite an oyster. It's a little bit more elegant, but also it's fully satin finished. So while it has the Sedna red gold that gives it a bit of a bling factor, they managed to balance that out by satin finishing it. And it's a similar case with the bezel. The bezel has a much finer fluting than the Datejust, so it still catches the light, but not in such a blingy way. And that's a reflection of it being a modern interpretation from the 2000s versus the Datejust, which still very much embodies the design it had in the 80s, albeit with much better quality and finishing these days. So those are my 3 alternatives to the Rolex Datejust. In my opinion, these all offer something different to what the classic Datejust does, but without sacrificing too much. And where they do sacrifice, like in the case of the Baume Mercier, you definitely make up for that in the price. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these 3 alternatives? Which one would you pick, or would you hold out and go with the classic Datejust? I'd love to know your opinions in the comments below. And of course, if you want to see all of the infographics shown throughout this video, then make sure you follow me on Instagram at Shaluso. If you liked the video, then make sure you like it and share it. And if you want to keep seeing new watch videos, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell as well so you can know when my next video comes out. In any case, thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.